Hey, thanks for clicking on the video. Today we're going to talk about how the way we use strand is pretty much completely changing next season. As you might have heard from the Developer Insight blog post that was released yesterday, strand is getting some big nerfs and some pretty impactful buffs at the beginning of next season. Many people have put a focus, and there's been a lot of discourse about the Suspend nerf, which will essentially change the entire playstyle of strand. Or will it? Well, it's nothing that deep, but we're going to talk about everything you need to know so that when the updates do hit and the new strand aspects are released, you know exactly what you're doing. Speaking of updates, by the way, let me know down in the comments if you're going to be participating in the world's first raid race, or if you're just going to do contest mode at all. And also, while you're down there, a subscription, that'd be pretty cool. But back to what we're talking about. First up, and of course the elephant in the room, let's talk Suspend nerfs. According to the blog post, Suspend's duration versus non-champion enemies will be reduced from 8 seconds to 5 seconds. Thread of continuity, the Fragment that increases all of your strand debuff durations, will extend that 5-second duration to 7 seconds. Suspend duration versus specifically champion enemies is being decreased from 8 seconds to 3 seconds. Just 3, and with Thread of Continuity, that gets up to 4 seconds. And then the last change for Suspend is they are increasing the snap damage dealt to suspended bosses by 67%. Honestly, I'm not sure what snap damage is. I believe it's the damage that is applied when they're hit by the suspender source. I guess that's a buff. So as for what these changes mean for our builds, well, Suspend is a huge part of every good strand build. How your build plays fundamentally revolves around what abilities cause suspension. For all classes, you've got the Shackle Grenade as a universal tool. Then on Warlock, you've got Mind Spun Invocation, which is pretty much a fancier way of saying Shackle Grenade. And then you've also got the Wanderer aspect, which is a fancier way of saying Tangles. Titans get access to Dranger's Lash, coming from their Barricade, and Hunters have Ensnaring Slam, coming from the Dodge, as well as 2 Shackles if they choose to run the Widow's Silk aspect. So I'll talk about Shackle Grenades in a second, but let's check out the non-grenade suspension sources. Regarding Titans and Hunters class ability suspension, we can do some workarounds so that it stays potent even with the nerfs coming next season. Warlocks just can't really, because since we aren't talking about Shackle Grenades yet, you need a Tangle for all of your suspension, and those are on a fringe timer, so no workarounds there. Anyways, for both Titans and Hunters, suspension comes from the class ability, and if we were trying to keep enemies suspended forever, we gotta maximize our class ability uptime. But before we can talk workarounds, we also have to introduce the next nerf. This nerf is hitting Thread of Mind. This fragment is the one that gives you class ability on suspended target kills. According to the blog post, the class energy is getting reduced a fair amount. For minor combatants, you only get 10% of your energy back. For major combatants, you'll get only 15%, and for bosses, champions, and mini-bosses, you will only get 25% of your energy back. This nerf isn't nearly as bad as the general Suspend nerf, but considering things are going to spend less time suspended, less things are going to die while suspended. And on top of that, they're giving less energy, so while this fragment will still continue to be an essential for PvE builds, we're gonna need to start doubling up. And this is kind of the first little piece of the new playstyle we're gonna be using. And what I mean by this is having multiple suspend sources active at once. So if we want to never have to worry about a barrier champion, we need to hit it with one source, like the Titan's Barricade Suspend, and then before the 4 seconds is up, we gotta hit it with another one, like a Shackle Grenade. I'm sure in some scenarios you already do this, but going into Season 22, this is going to be the norm for dealing with things like champions. You're going to need to consciously save 2 sources, 2 abilities to keep champions suspended for longer. And this is where we can talk about the final nerf and start moving more into what this new playstyle is going to be. And that final nerf hits Thread of Generation. This is the fragment that gives you grenade energy back on just dealing damage. According to the blog post, it's pretty much just reducing energy gain by 20%. However, it is increasing the energy you get from low fire rate weapons, so with all that, I think it will really just boil down to being 20% less for things with high fire rate and being much better for things with low fire rate. So I'm not so sure this is a total negative change. Regardless, this lowers how much we can feed into our grenades, which is actually a necessary part of our new strand playstyle. So I had touched on it a little bit already, but this new method of playing with strand is understanding the limitations of our suspend sources and being ready and prepared to use 2 sources for 1 enemy, especially champions. You can definitely 100% get away with using 1 source for non-champion enemies as long as you're conscious of the reduced suspend time, because 7 seconds is still a pretty long time. But regarding how we're going to be playing against champions, our objective is having both our shackle and our class abilities for Titans and Hunters available simultaneously. In this case, we can do the basic method of using mods like Bomber to get our grenade back and bolstering detonation to get our class ability back. This is the most basic form of this strategy, with the ability to dive much deeper if we use things like utility and grenade kickstart and start dipping into our armor charges. And I'll go over a little bit more loadout changes we can do in just a second. But regardless of how you set up mods, when we're playing, we are going to have to make decisions so that we can save our suspend sources for priority targets, which is going to be a lot different than our current style of just suspend everything that moves. Granted, as I'll get to in a second, it's definitely still possible to do that. But if we do want to keep that just suspend everything that moves playstyle, well, we're gonna have to dip into ability regen just a little more. One simple change you can make is just to have a perk like Demolitionist or even Wellspring on a weapon. We aren't really using our melee, and that'll likely be supplementary to Sever or cause those secondary effects, but having Demolitionist for your grenade, well, you can see how that's a benefit. And then also Wellspring, because that's the only perk that will give you back class ability energy. So definitely don't sleep on it, and check if some of your favorite weapons have a Wellspring roll. But with that in mind, if you're building your weapons, subclass of course, and your armor into just ability regen, we shouldn't even really feel the suspend nerfs. Again, as long as you know that you have to double up into champs and you're ready to use those 2 abilities. But that's not where strand changes end. Continuing, Threadlings are going to do 30% more damage. So Warlocks, and especially their super, are becoming quite a bit stronger. But Threadlings still aren't an option for the other classes until they can learn to not have all of your Threadlings aggro on one first thrall, effectively making your grenade absolutely meaningless. And then Sever is also getting a little better, with enemies doing 40% less damage to you instead of just 30%. But Sever is pretty uncommon with its application, so I don't really see this altering our playstyles that much. It's just gonna be a bonus. And then also, Tangles are having their cooldown reduced to 12 seconds, down from 15. So we can play strand just a little bit faster. Granted, I yearn for the day where Tangle cooldowns become like ability cooldowns, and we can actually speed it up ourselves. And finally, the last sweeping change coming to strand, which is definitely going to change our playstyles, is we're getting 3 new aspects. All we have right now are the names, but Bungie makes patch notes with new stuff in mind. So I expect all these changes are because these new aspects are likely going to dip into, well, everything that changed. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we actually get even stronger sources of spin, allowing us to continue our fantasy of total and constant suspension. But that's about it. That's everything regarding strand and how it's going to affect us next season. Let me know down in the comments if maybe I missed some play style or you've got any ideas of your own. And of course, thank you for watching this far into the video. If you want to support me, and support this channel, a like, a comment, and a subscription, well, they help a lot. And if you want to support me but you can't think of a comment down below, strand. And with that, as usual, I hope you're having a great day, and I hope to see you around.